afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this beautiful Plenitude session, session 4. We went through the sessions that we were discussing 2 chapters at a time. So now we take a breather and discuss 1 chapter, right? And we think that it's going to be easy. Think again, because it comes from Joanna. So it's not going to be easier. It's as deep as it's as studious, if we can say that way, even if to say that the session or the chapter is that way, than as the other ones. As Kirsten said very well, this is a book for us to sit down and study, and read again and again, and then a couple of years from now read again. But it's always an enlightening day for me personally to come and share what we have gathered from this. Not that we are saying that you have to see what we'll discuss, the chapter that we'll discuss, the same way that I'm seeing, that I'm bringing to you. You will take your own takeaways. You will come to your own conclusions. But all that I can ask is that you read the book yourself. I always like to remind everyone that besides this beautiful, amazing version from Leal, a publisher, we have this in Portuguese. And for those who read Portuguese, you can just Google and you'll be able to find the PDF as well. The translation, I would say, is 99.9%. I'm not a translator, so I can't really point fingers what this, but it's when I go back to the Portuguese that there are certain things, having English as a second language speaker, is pretty well done. So let us take the opportunity to read and to really embrace what we have in front of us. So session 4, we would like to go back and just kind of recap a little bit on what we have seen with this book entitled Plenitude from Joanna de Angelis. The book is this help for us, all of us, to transform ourselves, right? To reach plenitude. But to get to that point, I always like to remind everyone that we have to understand suffering. We have to understand why we are suffering. What did we do to suffer today? And not live a plentiful life, right? A full life. And that's exactly what Joanna de Angelis is discussing in this book. Chapter 1, suffering, an analysis of suffering, then the origins of suffering, the end of suffering, and then last week we stopped at approaches to end suffering. And tonight, this afternoon rather, we will talk about altruism. This is, if we can say this way, besides some other chapters that we'll still see in the future, is the chapter that we can consider a way out. Not perhaps in this lifetime, not perhaps tomorrow, but in the future. And it's important for us to have this understanding. Besides the understanding the way we live, we have to embrace the tomorrow. And I'm not talking about April 28th. I have to check the date. I forgot. April 28th. I'm talking about April 28th, 2029, April 28th, perhaps 2037, and then in the next lifetime, whatever date we may be, wherever time and age we are, to understand that we always have this idea of the next life. And we'll understand a little bit more, we'll talk a little bit more about it as we go in. So altruism. What is altruism to all of you? I was going to send the A2, is that, Kirsten, you put it back, right? I don't want to get confused. I was going to send a reminder for everybody, but I wanted to go ahead and discuss this with you here briefly. What is altruism to you? I mean, if it's just a couple words, I will go ahead and repeat it. If not, I can give you the microphone. What is altruism? Do good to others. Charity. Compassion. Okay, good. What else? Love in action. Good. Okay. And I hope everyone who follows us through the web. and suffering of others. Okay, so we have all these ideas, right? And it's easy for us to connect with charity. And it's true. It's true. Now, what if I am being altruistic or if I'm being charitable, but it's costing me? It doesn't cost. No? What if I put myself at risk to help someone else? Is that altruism? Sacrifice. Okay. I like to bring these discussions, these questions, because it makes us think. It makes us think. And it's sometimes if we think too much, we kind of like elaborate things that is not truly ourselves. So it's nice to go ahead and let's just go ahead and ask these questions. And sometimes we can do this as well as we were studying these chapters. We can read the title and say, okay, what is altruism? Because I was asking the same question. And when we think we know, Joanna de Angelis comes and say, okay, yes, but here's a little bit more, right? And it's amazing because we have this idea that it is this, and we have the concept. I like to say of myself that I think I have a little bit of the concept, but as far as practicing, it's not there yet. It's something that we take time, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this. But it's certainly something that we have to exhaust ourselves over and over and over and over to get to the point that these higher minds are helping us to understand or to get to, so that in the next lifetime, in the future, we're not suffering. So let us take a little bit of understand what we see in the world as altruism. Let us also bring some of the codification point that we can connect with the message, and Joanna de Angelis comes and enhance the topic, or how we can actually take baby steps to get to be an altruistic individual. Okay? Altruism, by the Merriam-Webster, we understand that is an act of unselfish regard for or devotion to the welfare of others, a behavior by an animal that is not beneficial to or may be harmful to itself, but that benefits others of its species. So, a mother that doesn't sleep because of the baby. Think about this. And the reason I'm throughout the talk tonight, hopefully I'll remember to bring small things that we do that sometimes we don't think it's altruism, or sometimes we don't think it's charitable, or sometimes we have received it, but we are unfortunately ungrateful that we don't recognize. But it's all around us. So, it's small acts that sometimes perhaps we are putting ourselves aside, right? And we are doing something for others, right? It could be anything, guys. It could be anything that we do. It could be the money that we're giving to charity. It could be the time that you're devoting to someone else that you could be doing a million things. When we come to the SSB and you do something, serve the water, talk to somebody. Or at work, simply at work, when you devote some time to another individual, or you put your tasks aside to help someone else. And yes, we complain. Yes, we are, sometimes a little bit upset because so-and-so left this task for me to do and didn't take care of what they were supposed to take care of it. So all of these examples, they're examples of altruism. Joanna de Angelis comes and says, it's too small, sorry. And I'll read for you. And yes, we will cover quite a bit of this chapter because the chapter is a little bit long and we're going to break it down. So there'll be some reading as the other ones. Altruism is a living lesson in charity, a high expression of ennoble love that opens the door to action, without which it would be pointless. So the first part of this, living lesson in charity. When we look at charity as perhaps anybody who crosses your mind, we can bring Chico Xavier, we can bring others in science, we can bring others in whatever field we are attached or connected to. We'll always have people who relentlessly do things because of it, because they think it's the right thing to do without asking themselves, what is in for me, right? Yeah, they may have a drive that sometimes is It's not well understood, but they're doing it and they're doing selflessly, right? So it's this door that we are trying to open to be in that constant action of doing well, of doing better. Altruism is the very love taught by Jesus himself, the kind that practice selflessness to focus on the welfare of others, forgetting all wrongs in order to expand by means of aspirations related to progress, order, and happiness. I wanted to go ahead and bring this paragraph here because I think that anytime we hold this example of Jesus to the end or to connect, it doesn't do us much of a favor. I think we have to always have this high bar that Jesus is for us to compare and say, I want to get there. I want to get there. I want to be able to be so rational and so loving at the same time that I know that for me, this is not important right now, but it's more important for someone else. It's more important for someone else. And then at the end, we'll make a connection again with this, but with Paul. The antithesis of selfishness. It heals the wounds of the soul caused by it and fosters comprehensive health. So now we're talking about an antithesis or the antidote of selfishness. Where did selfishness start or begin within ourselves? Did I start being selfish just because my mother said, Leo, don't give anything to anybody? Or, because I have people around me that they don't appreciate things? Or where did it happen? Because there are a lot of people in the world nowadays and they are selfish, but people around them, they're always loving and caring, right? Or the opposite. Where did it happen? Previous lives. Many, many, many acts. And this is justifiable in certain ways where we're trying to protect ourselves. We come from an age where we're running from the animals, we're running from the other species in general, right? And try to protect ourselves, try to protect our clan. And we took this to another level where now it's all for me. It's all for me. Or besides, being in a way of protecting, it became more of an egoism type of ethics, and that more than anything else, right? Or if I do something, I want to get something back out of it, right? So let us think about this. Let us make sure that we have this idea of understanding selfishness, because when we're dealing with others, it's not that it really soothes our hearts when we're dealing with a selfish individual, and we try and understand, but at least gives us an open heart to say, this person is walking the same pathways that I'm walking. So we understand a little bit better. And we don't get upset, we don't cause more suffering when we're dealing with other people, as well as when we're dealing with ourselves. Because sometimes when we catch ourselves doing something or being selfish, what do? We punish ourselves. And we're like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done that. And you kind of relive that situation over and over and over, and you create more suffering. So we are evolving. That's the point. Like I said, a couple of things that we would like to explore, revisit with Spiritism, because we have this basis. We have seen this. What is the greatest obstacle to progress? Pride and selfishness. These two is the hardest thing that we can liberate ourselves from. The second question that I would like to bring is, what is the true meaning of the word charity as Jesus understood it? And we mentioned this, I believe, the last time we were here. Benevolence towards everyone, and Yasko said that earlier. Indulgence towards the imperfection of others, and forgiveness of offenses, for offenses. So let's just bring this basis. And this basis alone, how we're getting rid of this idea of selfishness and being more altruistic, being more charitable, being kind to people, to ourselves, is, here's the example. We know what it is. And we're trying to get to the causes of it, and we're going to get to the causes more next week, next time we meet. But let us think about benevolence towards everyone. What would that be for you? Indulgence towards the imperfections of others, as we just mentioned. Perhaps the person is selfish. Perhaps the person is this, is that. But who am I to judge? Who are we to judge? We can help if we have the opportunity through actions much better than words. But who are we to judge? Forgiveness for offenses as well. So antidotes. But this is in the codification. There is a passage that I would like to also share with you from the Gospel according to Spiritism. We're not going to read the whole thing, but this chapter is an amazing chapter. Without charity there is no salvation. That is the title of the chapter, and it talks about charity. It talks about how to do it, and it is also a manual for us to really get rid of this idea of pride and selfishness in our life. Charity and humility, that is the sole path to salvation. Selfishness and pride, that is the sole path to perdition. This principle is formulated in precise terms in these words: you shall love God with all your soul and your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets are contained in these two commandments, because one cannot live without the other. I cannot say that I love God when I don't love my neighbor. If I understand that perhaps I am as equal as that individual created by God, therefore I cannot have any pride. If I think that I'm equal and I deserve the same thing as that other individual, therefore I cannot have any selfishness in my heart or even my mind. It's always nice to create the balance, right? As heart and mind in our lives, rational and the heart. So we're not really going one and the other, and then we have to reincarnate again to balance it out. So the idea here is that charity and humility. Be humble. Be charitable. A couple more things. What is the means for destroying selfishness? And we just saw with the Gospel according to Spiritism, of all human perfection, the most difficult to uproot is selfishness, because it is connected to the influence of matter from which human beings is still too close to their origin. Look at this. Cannot free themselves. Everything concurs to sustain its influence. Your laws, your social organizations, and your education. Selfishness will be weakened with the predominance of the moral life over the material life, and especially with the understanding that Spiritism gives you concerning your true future state, which is no longer distorted by allegorical fictions. It's in us. It's in everything that we do. Not Leo saying, not other reading that we find on social media. It's on the Spirit's book. The well-regarded Spirit's book that we study here, that we study at home. It's in everything that we do. So how do you change? Yes, it's hard. Yes, it's ingrained in us, right? As we just mentioned, it's just that evolving feeling or habits that we have from our past, from doing a million times. We always like to remind everyone that what is one of the laws that we have to follow? That is a natural law, the law of God, law of preservation, right? So it was okay then for us to live in a selfish world because we were trying to take care of ourselves. But now we're still trying to take care of ourselves, I understand, but on a different level. So that law of preservation that we study, we can't apply the same way that we applied 1,000 years ago. Or better yet, we cannot apply the same way that we just applied yesterday when we transgressed against ourselves and we transgressed against others as well. And I'm saying this, please don't think that I am perfect at this. I say we are the same because I'm still trying to learn as well and apply as much as I can. Joanna the Angeli comes and says, the impulses of the flesh, which seek to satisfy the instincts and the strongest, most primordial passions become delights of human kindness and understanding with altruism. Look at the transformation. What we had as a passion in the past will become a feeling of happiness. Because if I know that it's making me happy, guess what? I want to go ahead and help others. One's neighbors are no longer objects to be used, but to be honored. All stimuli are directed towards helping them grow and triumph over false needs, developing their awakening virtues so that their spiritual nature may overcome the dominant animal nature. Really interesting that I came across earlier this month, and I mentioned, I believe the last time as well, was a couple reasons about from Immanuel Kant that it's related to its, and I even took note, the second version of the categorical imperative, where he explains that we should not treat people as means, but as ends. In other words, if I use somebody or a situation that is connected, obviously, with somebody, to get something at the end, I'm exploiting that individual. But as we try to ennoble ourselves, right? As we try to grow, and with altruism, we don't do that anymore. We stop saying, okay, yes, I have a product, and this person will be the way for me to go ahead and make money, or to get to this means, or to get to that. Because I see that individual in itself is an entity, is a brother, a sister, as I am as well. Or we can just reverse and say, what if I was being exploited or used as a tool to get something? It makes us think. This is the transformation that Joanna D'Angelo is trying to bring to us. Now, here is the catch, that we think that this is something that we have to do overnight, that we have to be altruistic out of no time. Joanna D'Angelo brings us a kind of like tools that we can utilize in our day-to-day lives for us to become altruistic. Or, if you don't believe that you're an altruistic person, this will probably prove you wrong. Because I'm quite sure that some of you have some of these elements in you that you're already doing in small tokens, small ways here and there, but you're doing. You're doing it. She says that existence of altruism is revealed by various sentiments of moral greatness, which gives dignity to life. And she breaks down, in a way she kind of goes back and forth with a couple of them, in the following: generosity or benevolence, serenity, patience, courage, effort, concentration, and focus. And that's what we're going to study. That if you want to become an altruistic individual, these are the steps that you can choose just one. Choose just one right now. You can choose one. And then later on, as we discuss, and say, okay, I was doing that, but I can add a little bit of what Joanna D'Angelo is bringing to me, right? And then perhaps a couple years from now, as you read the book, okay, now I'm going to work on effort. I need to put a little bit more effort in my life. And then, or whatever you want to do. Kirsten, since you helped us coin the term, what did we learn from towards the end of the Gospel according to Spiritism, that God will grant us if we ask with favor, with faith? Do you remember? I know Kirsten knows. And we say it all the time. Okay, somebody is actually faints over here. What do we need to do? Guys, everybody just going to stand and What is it, Isabella? CPR. What does CPR stands for? 3 things, guys. All right. Some of them are already up there. What is it? 2 of them are up there. CPR. Courage. Patience. And what's the other one? Resignation. Okay? right there. The effectiveness of prayer. What God will grant us, if asked with trust, is courage, patience, and resignation. The Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 27. The reason I bring this is because Joanna D'Angelo is not bringing anything new, right? And it connects, as we have seen with some of the other passages that we brought from the Spirit's book and the Gospel according to Spiritism, but she's adding to it. She's helping us understand, bringing it to our level, and reminding us that we are doing some of these things. Some of us are very generous. Some of us display some generosity in our clan or with our family. And that's okay, because that one day will transform. Serenity. Serenity is something that I still have to... Patience. Complicated, right? Courage. Who is courageous? Not so bad. Effort. Not bad. Concentration and focus. Where is Paula when we need concentration and focus? Because she likes to meditate. She reminds us all the time. And it is true. And we'll see the value of it as well to all of us. So let's explore these things a little bit. Generosity. What do you think generosity may be? To be generous. Okay, quick. What comes to mind when we think of generosity? Don't elaborate too much.
Not judge.
Huh? Giving.
Not judge.
Not judging too much. Okay. To be generous. All right. Do good. Okay. We're going from some specifics to some broad answers, but that's okay. Joanna D'Angelis brings to us, generosity assumes a prominent role among these sentiments because it is altruism's primary practical manifestations, and thus its initial form externalized in action. It is customary to say that those who do not open their hands keep their heart closed. This is true, for generosity begins as materialized sentiment that loves and desires to be of assistance. Giving. Let's focus on the giving. As she's saying over here, it starts with the action of giving. If you have it, multiply it. Did you see that I just said multiply it, not if you have it, give it, multiply it. Because this is important as well, because many of us may think, okay, I'm going to give to people, they will not learn how to attain for themselves. That's an excuse, by the way. And sometimes it is true, because we see people take advantage of other people all the time. But multiply it. See if the person have the means to, in fact, receive and multiply it by giving it to somebody else. Kirsten was reading a passage of the Gospel according to Spiritism about riches. Isn't it true if I were to say right now to you that each one of us tomorrow, when you check your checking account, you will have $10 million in your checking account? Now, without judging, we know what we would be doing. But quickly, think of what Leah would be doing with that $10 million. What the next two, we're talking about altruism, guys. Give it to us, Yasko. Think about our desires, our hidden desires, right, inside of us. And now think that everybody here have something in mind that they would love to do. Perhaps with family members, perhaps they would give to, share with others. But we have our ways to life, of ways to see money as well. So we have to make sure that we change this idea of multiplying. When we say give, think about multiplying, the multiplication of values, right? The law of reproduction is not necessarily to reproduce or to have kids, but really to reproduce what we have, the means that we have in our hands, right? Opening one's hand is the gestures of letting the generous flow of giving pour forth from the heart to the outside world in order to manifest the grand forms of self-denial in the future. Therefore, generosity gives things, objects, utensils, food, clothing, shelter, and etc. At first, and and then offers sentiments, honing the art of serving to the point of selfless dedication. We give because it's the right thing to do. We give because it's a way to ennoble life. We have a really interesting, it just came to mind, we have a really interesting holiday that is in the US, is not well cherished or followed, but it's King's Day, right? And in Europe and perhaps other countries in other parts of the world, it's, they really celebrate, the idea of giving, right? And I believe it's the 6th of January, I think, that everybody gives gifts, they give gifts to kids and all. It's really interesting because it's this idea of giving, right? When a child is born, when somebody attains something, there is a struggle to get somewhere, and we see that a person really puts the effort to conquer that, whatever they're trying to follow. So it's something nice that we can start thinking, and if it is hard to be generous in the less materialistic sense, let us utilize what we have in abundance and just give out. When Jesus was on the cross, suffering from human ingratitude, he even assisted the thief who pleaded for his help, generously promising him the kingdom of heaven, which began to take hold in the thief's mind and heart from that moment on. This is the ultimate goal. When somebody is next to you that we believe that person has no way out, right? And we're thinking, no, this person is also a son or a daughter of God. Let us praise, or let's ask God that individual as well as myself, not in an egotistic way, that we are saved. And this is Jesus as an example, because Jesus was able to see that individual was able to recognize his or her mistake and say, okay, now I need to change. That doesn't mean that perhaps that individual did not have to reincarnate or went to heaven, because we also understand that we have to make sure that we learn, and the way to learn is through reincarnation. But for sure, the place in heaven was already reserved for that individual, as it is for us. Next one, serenity. This is a little bit short, but serenity. We study generosity. How can we be altruistic, not being generous? And we're going to ask this question as we progress. Now, I'm going to ask this question now. How can you be altruistic if we're not serene? What is to be serene in terms of altruism? What do you guys think?
Not to raise hell when already is a problem.
Not to,
Raise turmoil.
Raise turmoil. Raise. Okay.
We have a problem.
Okay. Why do we raise turmoil? Why do we get upset?
Because we forget to trust God.
We forget to trust God. Huh? We're imperfect. Okay, but Kirsten? We're conflicted. Where the conflict lies inside of us, but why we have that conflict? I'll give an example. If I see Chris throwing paper on the ground, and I come and say, Chris, really? And say something really arduous to Chris, and I get upset with him, and everybody sees it. The conflict, right? I still have that inside of me. Not that perhaps I'm doing anymore, but I just came out of that situation that now I can notice that throwing something on the ground is not good. And I think that I am, above everything, above the law of throwing papers on the ground, that I can come and really say something harsh to him. The conflict. So it happens because we have inside of us. It happens because we don't understand that we are all in this evolutionary path, without which we can be an altruistic person. She says the following, As altruism expands, it takes an ethical aspect. Look at this. Now it's a shift, if I may say to all of you, because now she's talking about not as a habit, not as a way to conduct ourselves, but it's an ethical way of seeing things and conducting ourselves. We can see this ethic as being the serenity that respects all behaviors without imposing its own way of living, of looking at life, of expressing itself. Besides being a moral ethic, it is a universal character, overcoming interest and geographical conventions, which establish concepts of convenience based on prejudice and limitations, and on transitory laws that may be necessary at times but not intended for the common good. A lot to say it, but in a short sentence, accept who is around you. When I say accept, is not that we're not going to do anything, right? He threw the paper on the ground. I can go and pick it up and say, hey, next time, the trash can is right there. I don't have to make it public. I changed yesterday. Now I'm going to help somebody else change. But I accept. I understand that that's the person's limitation. And that goes with everything. When she talks about the geographical conventions, it's everything. Who am I to judge what's happening in another country, in another culture, when I don't even know how to accept my own culture here? The conflicts that we have as a foreigner, right? Dealing with sometimes when we go back and we look at our own culture and say, wow, really? Are you kidding me? Well, we were doing the same thing just a couple of years ago. And how can we judge? So it's this change. It takes time. So to be altruistic, we have to start working on this idea of being serene, of being have this acceptance within us. Thus, there are ethics that support, look at this. Thus, there are ethics that support slave states, restrict freedom of movement, hinder procreation, persecute those who disgrace with their code, disagree with their codes, thank you, and punish and destroy at will. It happens. I always like to utilize this and apply to ourselves. How many times we do this to ourselves? The same way that we judge other people sometimes, as Kirsten said, because of our conflicts, we're conflicting with ourselves. The old Leo of yesterday, now I'm battling with this idea, questioning. But instead of being serene and accepting, what do? I hurt myself. And we'll see this sometimes when you look in the mirror, you're like, oh, you look weird. Oh, this is funny. You look, I don't know, you need to change. And you're always in that battle. A lot of this happens in our teen years, right? It's that, okay, I'm a new individual. But sometimes that can go on and on in life in different ways, in different levels. The ethics of generosity, and she goes back to generosity. The ethics of generosity focus its attention on natural law or the laws of love, which respects life at every stage and protects all sentient beings, promoting their expansion. It's universal. It can be something that, well, let us this differently. It starts with our small groups, right? And then it starts multiplying to a way where when we look at another culture, when we look at our neighbors, we look at it and say, okay, with time, this will change. With my resignation and my good deeds, perhaps this will change. Going back to generosity, and just a couple more points over here, she says the ethics of generosity focusing attention on the natural laws, as we mentioned. This is a good point that I would like to bring because it's not by chance that we have the Spiritism in our hands. She says, the spirit benefactors of humanity gave Allan Kardec complete ethical guidelines derived from natural law and therefore from God, to be expressed in other laws, which fosters progress, preserve life, and dignify all. These laws use labor to advance humans, all of whom are equal in origin, yet different in intellectual and moral achievements. They are without privilege, but within the reach of all. I don't have any other way, or I haven't seen in my life any better way to sum up that we are equal as this paragraph over here. The way she puts it and the way that she brings that, the idea of what Spiritism brings to us, I haven't seen it yet. And when we looked at, we cover the natural laws. She's covering the labor law, right? The law of labor, that we have to work. It's not easy. It's not just for me, but it's for everybody else. If we study, we have to multiply it in our actions, when we speak, when we do everything. And it's attainable for everybody. Because if we can do it, others can do it. If others can do it, I can do it as well. Sometimes we say, oh, no, this is for this person. Yeah, perhaps it's not for me now, but guess what? The next reincarnation, Aloysio, math will be your thing. You'll be studying math. You become a mathematician. Perhaps now, for Aloysio, I'm just joking, but perhaps for Aloysio, math is something very distant. But there will be a time that he will have to master math. There will be a time that I have to master other things. And so on, to get to a point where we become a Christ-like spirit. It does not choose certain individuals over others, although its expression of love varies according to the effective responses. But this does not invalidate the need to overcome the obstinacy of wrongdoers and see them too as being in need of benevolence, which can and should be offered to them. I do the same thing. When I read these chapters for the first time, or I'll revisit, and I look at it, I was like, wow, what is she trying to say? It's extremely deep. It's extremely deep. There is no choosing. There is no for this person and maybe for that individual. It's for everybody. This idea of generosity, remember, and this is a complementation of generosity, because she starts with generosity, she goes into serenity, and then she goes back to generosity, and we'll see the other ones. But when we are generous, when we are giving, it's for everybody. That's the ultimate goal. The ethic of benevolence is not repressive, since it is devoid of punitive nature. Nevertheless, it's critical thinking analyzes everything and everyone in order to produce the best. The only idea, the only reason we will analyze the individual is to, or let's say, think about what that person is or how he would act as I give, is to help us decide what will be the best way to give and what we can give, so that the product is a better product. Do I make myself clear? It's not that I'm judging, but Daniel, if I give him this to him, he's just going to leave on the side. Now I'm judging him in a way that, okay, but I know Daniel, he's really good with cameras, with computers. So what will be the best way to help Daniel if I need to help him? Give him something that he's going to utilize. Huh? Hang in there, Daniel. Hang in there. So that's the idea. For us to analyze, yes, we can, think. We should be rational beings when we are giving, but only to understand how will this be effective. Just like our kids. Do you give the car when the teen is starting to drive, or are you going to give him a helicopter? Right? So things like that. I know this is kind of a little bit off, but and I'm going through that now, so just pray for me and bear with me. Patience. I think this is one of the hardest aspect of or factors to become a well-balanced altruistic individual. Patience. What is to be patient?
Is to give time for the others to reach a point that you wish. When we don't give time,
So to give time to others to reach a point.
that we wish.
But wouldn't that be serenity? Or it's part of it?
You need time. You need to give time. And
Okay.
God gives time to every one of us. The whole time.
So
We don't
God-
give. We don't give.
God gives time for each one of us. We don't give
In
time.
our
Right.
time.
Mhm.
In our pace.
Okay.
So we
So,
don't give. So we don't have patience.
you already. I was going to ask you another question, but you already answered. We don't have patience. We don't give time to others. Good. Thank you. Anybody else? Chris. More understanding. Okay. Tolerance. Okay. Kirsten, did you?
I was going to say something similar to what Yasko had said. It's being able to understand the other person, or understand the circumstance, or understand yourself and what you're going through. And you
Too
need to-
long. Sorry.
I just wanted to say what kind of along the lines of what Yasko was saying, that it's being able to understand the other person, where they're at in life, being able to understand and have understand yourself, and that everything is just time. And I think that plays a factor in patience somehow. So it's kind of the same what Yasko was saying.
Okay. Thank you. How many hours do we have in a day? How are you using those 24 hours? Just food for thought. I know it's simple questions, but sometimes we forget that within those 24 hours, there are a lot of things that we do. We are patient in certain circumstances, but we really lack this feeling inside of us, habit inside of us. So, patience. Patience creates conditions for each accomplishment at the proper time, neither postponement, hastiness, nor impulsiveness, for they do not lead to the hoped for results. Two aspects: postponing or this, let's get it done now. Sometimes when we are too patient, right? Well, I shouldn't say too patient, because when you're there's no such a thing as too patient. We leave things undone, right? Or we postpone, I'll do this tomorrow. Yeah, there are certain things that we can do tomorrow, but there's got to be a reason why we left for tomorrow. There's got to be a reason why Aloysia will leave meth for the next reincarnation, right? Or Leo, let's put myself then, Leo to become a doctor, or to operate a surgeon. I'm like, that is not something that I would like to do. So this is really something that we have to think. So what about rushing to things that we know that we're going to hurt ourselves, and perhaps we're going to hurt others, right? This idea that we have to get it done, and we have to get it done now. It really destroys what we're hoping for. Patience harmonizes human aspirations, teaching the value of well-prepared, continuous action, which attends to each task in a timely manner. The 24 hours a day. Here's the thing. An example of this. We leave work physically, but not mentally and spiritually. We take it home. Or we go to work, but we don't leave the house. We bring the house problems with us. Where is our time management on this? There's a time for everything. This is time for me to think about this. This is why sometimes many of us we are really anxious to get things done, or we go on with our days thinking that we have an event coming up on this coming Saturday in New Jersey. Beautiful. But the time will come that I will be at that event. I don't have to worry about that event right now. I don't have to worry about what's going to happen tomorrow, or the meetings that I will schedule my time, that I will have that moment. Perhaps I'll think about it, I'll prepare, right? But time for everything. Kirsten.
Can I make a comment?
Yes. You raised your hand.
It seems to me that patience is something that, as a prerequisite, we would require a lot of self-reflection, because you have to be able to reflect on your current situation, whether or not it's the proper time or not. and and everything surrounding it. You have to be able to self-reflect and be in tune with yourself.
Very well said. We will see this a little bit at the end when we talk about concentration and focus. This is exactly what Joanna de Angelis says, that these factors or these ideas, they work together. One will depend on the other and one will bring the other. And we have been doing this now because when we ask about patience, we saw some serenity aspects or ideas, right, connecting with that. So one thing brings the other. So thank you, Kirsten, for your comment. It is true. It is something that we have to stop and think. Patience enables one to redo any failed work with the same enthusiasm, and it teaches one how to go about it most efficiently without the fatigue that leads to pessimism and giving up. It knows that what cannot be done today can be done later if one perseveres. See, it can be done tomorrow, but we have to persevere and we have to understand where we left off or why it didn't happen yesterday so we don't do the same things over and over and over. And then we don't become this stagnated person that is procrastinating every time. Life keeps on growing, molecule by molecule, in an atmosphere of harmony, patience, and relentless activity. Our physical bodies show this to us every single day. If it changes, it's because we did something to it, right? So our body, our composition, the universe waits for certain things to happen to give a product or to come together and give a product. So the example is all over us. Patience stimulates courage, you see? Stimulates courage, which strives to bring the results in line. This courage is the result of knowing the laws that provide persistence in the program of altruism. And it comes with courage. So let's go back. Can we be an altruistic person if we're not patient? Some level. let's just give a little bit to ourselves. In some level, yeah, I can be generous, but not patient at all. But again, if you don't have patience, what's going to happen if you don't have a little tiny bit of patience? When you give something, you're going to be expecting a result right away. So it's there, but so we have to really work at it. But as Joanna de Angelis says, to be courageous. What is to courage in relation to altruism or to be an altruistic person?
To go beyond our comfort zone to help someone.
Okay, go beyond our comfortable zone, right?
Help, yeah.
To help. Good, very good. What else? We establish boundaries for one another and for ourselves. Remember, our laws, our educational system, we have boundaries. We tell ourselves what is right and what is wrong. And we live and we multiply and we relive the same ideals with one another. Sometimes we make it worse. Sometimes we read something positive and we are, oh gosh, we diminish the positiveness or whatever, or even you go into a nice place and all that you see is negativity around you. Going beyond, as Yasko is saying, is one of the ways for us to break these rituals, to break the cultural aspects of our lives that we say, this is supposed to be this way or that way. It connects with the idea of serenity as well, because when we have the limitations in front of us, we're able to say, no, I'm going to be courageous to go ahead and break that brick, to break that wall. And that's one of the things that we really have to strive for. Courage is a moral quality for facing the struggle and persevering in it, never giving up on it for any reason. Ongoing effort allows the continuation of the action, which accomplishes the set program. The eradication of the causes of suffering is only possible through the effort one commits to that task. Without such effort, it fails, delaying the eradication. The book is about the end of suffering, to be plentiful, to live a plentiful life. And when we're doing so, we're also helping others to be plentiful, to find the same end. Well-directed effort characterizes the degree of an individual's evolution. More prevalent in some than others, it sets them apart, attesting to their achievements while enabling them to see how much is yet to be done. Think of how sometimes we look at individuals and we say, oh, this person can get this done. Why can that person get it done and I cannot? Or other individuals cannot get things done, right? Their courage sets them apart. It's what set most of us apart on how we get things done. And that goes back to the serenity, the patience, right? To wait and not to be disastrous with our actions, as well as to continue on and say, no, I'm going to get this done. Thus, seriously persisting, to acquire altruism by engaging in activities that must be completed step by step is a sure means of freeing oneself from suffering. To finalize, hence, people's character is measured by their effort to grow and improve in order to face the reactions that their ideals and undertakings cause. Be courage. It's one of the aspects of what? CPR. You always remember that now. If you're in despair and you pray, what will I get? Between those three things, what can I ask to help me now? Because to pay my bills, God is not going to help me directly to pay my bills, but He will give me one of those aspects: courage, patience, and resignation. And what aspect of my prayer, of those three elements, I can ask, or what one of those three elements will help me pay my bills? I'm giving you a mundane example, but it's for us to really remember what God will grant us. What God will grant us. Kirsten.
Just as an added thing, there's a really, since Paula's not here, in the spirit of Paula, there's a really great book by Dr. Brené Brown. Okay, too long.
There's a really great book, and this is in honor of Paula since she's not here. There's a really great book by Dr. Brené Brown, and it's called Daring Greatly, and it talks a lot about being courageous and the level of vulnerability it takes for us to be truly courageous. And I have a quote, but I'll read it later.
Okay, hold that quote. Thank you. But it's not easy when you have to be the one in the room where everybody's quiet to raise your hand, right? To speak up, or to break the status quo, the bullying, right? What everybody thinks it's okay, and you say, no, this is not okay. No, everybody's thinking this way because you have a hidden agenda. A very interesting movie that I watched some time ago, and I'm referring to the first one, which I think it came out in the 60s. It's called 12 Angry Men. And it's a group of 12 individuals, Judy, deciding on a case. I'm not going to tell you the whole movie, but everybody started thinking guilty, 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 guilty. And one of them said, wait a minute, why do you think that way? And one by one, this one person started changing the way they saw the case. And at the end, they're all said not guilty. Amazing. Amazing. I'll try to find. Huh? Well, but you have to watch it, and it's nice that you know it's going to happen from the beginning. You know it's going to happen, but you have to understand the process that he uses, and the process that the bias that each of the. Huh? I think so. Yes, I think so. I don't remember the names, but it's an amazing movie because you see the biases that we have, and it takes a lot of courage for one person in the room with all the elements. And pay attention to elements that you watch. I'll try to send it to all of you. Pay attention to the elements because you'll be like, wow, I never thought about this. I never thought that also influences me a whole lot. And this takes us to another level for us to understand this. The environment. It's something that with these studies are very I have been trying to pay attention to the reasons why we feel this or that way. Why we're sometimes irritable. Why we're sometimes calm. All of a sudden, when everything is on fire. Right? Pay attention to that. Start thinking and asking yourself, why am I feeling this way? Before you react, be courageous enough to say, why am I feeling this way? What's going on? What caused me to get to this point? So that tomorrow, I am not suffering. I'll be more plentiful. Be courageous. Effort. Yasko, you say this is hard? Oh, yeah, you said actually the opposite. You said this is the easiest one. Effort. It's easy, okay. Action, guys, the law of work. We have to have some effort to get up and be altruistic. Nobody's going to do it for you. If you want to attain that, muscular and strong body, you got to do it. The same thing with our habits. Nobody will do it for you. Joana de Angelis, Emmanuel, Chico Xavier, André Luiz, or you name it, the different philosophers, Kant, everybody will come to you and tell you how to do it. But if you don't put it into practice, it's not going to happen. Effort encourages the development of dormant inner resources. Dormant inner resources. Because if you think that you don't have, you do have. People grow as they accomplish something. The proper channeling of their efforts has a boosting effect for the pull towards degrading practice, which break down one's moral resistance, is also a compelling force which should be aimed at higher realizations. I don't know if we're going to discuss here, but I want to discuss something that she also brings in this part of effort, is that sometimes we think that when we suddenly start something that is going to be too hard. Guess what? You're setting yourself for failure. And sometimes we feel that this way. It's okay. It's okay for us to start something and say, oh, what have I got myself into? Don't tell anybody. I feel sometimes when I study this book. Or when I study Taught in Life. But recently, and I shared, I believe, with some of you, I believe Daniel shared with me, this professor in Brazil, he was talking about on how, studying certain parts of philosophy, that you get a text and you look at it, you say, okay, what is this guy trying to say? And you read perhaps 2 or 3 paragraphs and you're like, wait a minute, no, let me read it again. But then by the third time you're like, oh, no, this is not for me. Why is it not for you? And he goes on in a very, let's say, mundane way to say it, that if somebody brings you a text, all that you have to do is read and try and understand. Why in the world do you down yourself saying that this is not for me? If that person created something and he wishes people to read and understand as well, that's all you have to do. So Joana de Angelis brings you something, go and read it 3,000 times. That one paragraph, but until you get it. Don't let that destroy you and say, oh, this is not for me. Because guess what? If you postpone now and don't put the effort, you will have to revisit tomorrow. Because to be a Christ-like individual, you have to revisit. You have to master it. So when we go back to the different philosophers, the mathematicians, since we're talking about math, right? And the different sciences of the world, it's something from God that we have developed. God gave us the intelligence for us to develop. And we are challenged and we put our efforts into it, guess what? We are also able to understand. So I do that many, many times. There is something that I do very interesting that I discover myself, and for you may be kind of hard. If I read it and I don't understand, what I do, I have a way on my computer to go ahead and highlight it, and I listen to it as I'm reading. Or I read and I record myself and I listen to myself reading as I read as well. I know it's crazy. It may sound insane, but it's as if I'm talking to myself, right? That third person helping me understand what that text is saying. Because guess what? It's going to happen one way or the other. And I'm not going to say that at times I look at it and say, this is tough. But I'll go back to it tomorrow, because right now it's kind of hard. But we have to do it. We have to put some effort. Altruism cannot manifest without effort, since there seems to be a conspiracy on the part of selfishness to prevent it from taking hold of emotions. What is she trying to say here? When we are altruistic, and we are still a little, that little pride inside of us, little selfish inside of us is still eating our brains, what we do, we expect something back, right? That we give something and you see the person trashing all the work that you put forth. Oh, Leo told me to be altruistic, but I did with this person, but the person really didn't care. And what we do? Next time we have to be altruistic again, we use that as a parameter. We use that as a guideline to say, no, I'm not going to do this again. And then the selfishness comes up again. And then you relive the whole thing again, right? Until we get sick, and then we're rescued with the altruistic actions of others, and then we open up. So if we do, and people don't realize that you're doing it, it's okay. We know that we did what we were supposed to do, and as much as we could do. Just a parallel with the Gospel according to Spiritism, in order to practice the good, the action of the will is always necessary, whereas in order not to practice evil, idleness and negligence are often enough. This is again from chapter 15, talking about being charity as the salvation, utilizing charity to be saved. That we have the Apostle Paul reminding us that we have to do something. We have to act. There's got to be an action. That's why in Spiritism we learn that charity is love in action. It's not something that sits on the shelf. It's not something that we know in the back of our mind saying, okay, it should be charitable. It's not the charity of just giving money or giving food, but being charitable in every place, in every situation that you can be. Right? So it's important for us to see, and we'll close with Apostle Paul as well. But one point that I would like to do, I know we're kind of like stringing with time right now, but this idea to be saved. What do you think of this idea of being saved is? Saved from what? Not to fall in the same hole. To miss the target. Because there is this feeling in the air that saved from sins, or saved from the impurities of the world, right? All these things that sometimes conflict our minds. But it's saved from ourselves. Being safe here is being safe from ourselves, from our wrongdoing of the past, from the repetitive ways of life that Leo have put forth thus far, and that has put me in a situation, and all of us, including not only myself, but everybody who is around me, because if I'm not happy, if I'm not 100%, guess what? Those around me, they're not going to be happy. I mentioned the environment earlier, right? Why we feel this way. If I don't analyze, what's around us, then we're not by ourselves. Law of society, responding to the law of society. So it's important for us to think about saving for ourselves from the ways that made me really not plentiful or suffer today. And most importantly, for us to stop suffering in the future as well. To finalize, in terms of the aspects, there are a couple more things that we're going to talk about after this, but concentration and focus. Concentration and focus. What does this have to do with altruism, or to be an altruistic person? Be attentive to the other needs. Okay. What else? Is altruism a goal that we have? Perhaps not. We don't think that, okay, tomorrow I'm going to be more altruistic. And hopefully by after this talk, we will do so. We will put that in our list as well. Okay? When I say altruistic, it doesn't mean that we're going to be altruistic in every sense of the word, or in every way, because we're still growing, I understand, but at least in certain actions, in certain aspects of that will get me to be an altruistic person, as I was saying, add the patience, add the courage that we talk, whatever. But we have to make that a goal. We'll get there. We'll get there, Yasko. And we have to focus. So we have to have this balance in our lives. As Kirsten was saying, the ability to stop and think. How many times we start something and we get to the middle of it and we're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And we think it's wrong to say, you know what, let me pick my battles here. This is really going well, but there are certain aspects of this goal or what I'm trying to achieve that I need to put aside, because instead of helping, it's hurting. To get a degree, to get a new job, or to work for a material gain, or something that you need or that your family need, there are certain things that perhaps may not be working. We think that working too much will make us rich. Well, a lot of people say that if you work too much, you don't have time to get rich. But just again, another mundane way and a joke for us to think that you really have to strategize yourself, because guess what? Your energy also is important. So if you're working too much, chances are you're not going to get to that point that you're going to be rich. This is exactly what Joanna Diana is saying, to concentrate, to stop, to think, to meditate, right? Another essential key to altruism is focus on it, otherwise the mind strays, opening cracks for pessimistic, discouraging ideas to enter. Focusing the mind on an altruistic action allows for the establishing of an effective plan for deciding on techniques and gathering resources to carry it out. What do I have with me that will help me attain this goal faster? What is around us? If I look in the room right now, knowing you a little bit, I can point out some of the characteristics that perhaps will help us do an event, a spiritist event. I know some of you would like to do A, B, C, and we're going to say, okay, no, I'm going to go ahead and utilize this person. When I say utilize, it's not to get any gains, but to really help a greater good to receive what or to achieve what we're trying to work on. Think of being the CEO of everything that is around you, not only the people, but your own resources as well. You're not going to let that sit. And you can only do this with this focus, with this concentration, by stopping, saying, this is what I want, this is what I need, and this is how I'm going to accomplish. Focus expands individuals' horizons while strengthening them inwardly by providing for the exchange of higher energies that vitalize them, renewing their energies when depleted, especially during an altruistic endeavor, because it takes energy. It takes energy to be generous. It takes energy to be patient. It takes energy to be serene when others are yelling at you and you just keep calm. Right? Sometimes you are in an argument, after you leave, guess what? You're tired afterwards. Some people, they get hungry. Some people, they get lightheaded. It happens, right? So it takes energy. And when you regroup with yourself, you regroup your resources, what happens? Okay, now things are contained. I need to move on because I need to look at the target and I need to keep on going. Unaccustomed to lofty gestures, people react against them. They become aggressive and ungrateful and acknowledge the positive results only later. This attitude quite often discourages selfless, unprepared individuals who retreat or give up because they did not seek the support of medication, and consequently let themselves be poisoned by such toxicity. The same way that we just mentioned, that people will not appreciate what you're doing. And this is the time to say, okay, yeah, I did what I could. It was harsh or it was hard. It took a lot of my energy to get this done, but the person didn't appreciate. But I'm going to move on because my target is A or B or C. take in consideration that when we say that we have a target, it doesn't have to be the target of being altruistic. But if you know that what you're doing is something positive, something good, that will benefit others, and without putting yourself as a person who will benefit directly, because we're all going to benefit, then it's altruism. Think of the law of labor. What does labor means, as we learn with the Spirit's book? Work, right? What is work?
What has to give positive results?
What gives positive results?
It's not just keep average.
Okay? We'll give more time for us to think.
It's meditation, not medication.
It is meditation. Thank you. All right, thank you. I knew it was meditation, but that's why I read it a couple times. So I know it is meditation, but thank you. Work is what? Every positive action that will result in something good. So brushing my teeth, it is work. Right? Doing something productive at home is work. You know, I love saying this to kids, because kids, as kids, we have this idea that work is something that you have to get out of the house, you have to dress up, and then you bring the money to the house, or you do. No, it's everything that we do that is useful for ourselves and for one another. It's a beautiful spin that Spiritism can bring to all of us in terms of what work is, right? You can do work by holding a child and helping the mother, right? So all of this is work, and we really have to make sure that we're not losing this focus. This is my end point. This is where I want to get to. So we cover a lot of things, right? Generosity, patience. Let's go back over here. Generosity, benevolence, serenity, patience, courage, effort, concentration, and focus. Choose one. With these points that we brought, read the book so you can learn even more and work at it. And make that the pillars of your altruistic ultimate being, if we can say it that way. Because once we start doing so, once we get to the point that this altruistic ideal is embedded in us as an ethical way of living, right? Joanna de Angeli tells us that after living according to the above items, wisdom takes hold in people's mind and hearts. Wisdom frees them from ignorance, points out the real purpose of physical existence, and stimulates them to pursue increasingly alluring and pleasing new endeavors, beckoning ahead. The wisdom that sometimes we think that, oh gosh, this person's so wise, right? And usually we also connect that with maturity in life, right? But it's something that it's attainable to all of us. It's attainable to all of us. Because when we see that perhaps, yes, I will put myself at risk in terms of I will eat less. I will have less to live, but enough to conduct my life. And by giving to others, I will get to this wisdom that she's talking about. Simple things that I just mentioned. It's not that we are, as Chico Xavier mentioned before, that we are being asked to go up on Mount Everest. No. Simple things. Simple, small tokens. And all of us, we do at some level, but we have to do more. We're being called to do more. Wisdom renders love prudent, and it makes it a benevolent, giving, altruistic sentiment, and keeps it from degrading into sentimentality, which hides the schemes of the sickly ego. At the same time, wisdom provides the intellect the peaceable perception that reason must join forces with the humane, serene, and kindly sentiment, because that is what persuades people. The more we do, the more we gather in terms of knowledge, understanding, as well as of other people doing. At the end, it's going to benefit us. Now, we don't want to be an altruistic, which is also a point studied by ethics in general ethics, that is asking for something back. Because a lot of people, they're altruistic, and there is such a thing. I think it's called reverse, forgive if I'm wrong with this, I believe it's called reverse altruistic individual, where you're doing something, it's a good cause, but you also want to gain something from it. It works at the end, but there's a hidden agenda. For example, a company that says that, okay, when you buy my product, I'll give one of my products to the needy. It's beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that, but there is a gain, right? And a lot of people, when we're not saying that this is how they're thinking, but behind there is also a gain, right? We're doing because it's the right thing to do. We're doing because we want to we get to this wisdom, and it costs, but we have to do it. Finally, now is the last part of it. When the steps conducive to altruism are developed and wisdom is acquired, the spirit is enlightened and life makes sense. The limits of time and space are surpassed in light of the grand goal to be reached. Yes. Oh, wow. Here's the thing. Suffering then gives way to peace because its karmic causes disappear, overcome by new liberating actions. And since negative causes are no longer generated in the present, the future is not bleak or threatening. Thus, altruism thrives in the mind and the heart, and it's no longer the man or the woman that lives, but Christ that lives in them. As Paul stressed, as other martyrs experienced, along with the heroes and sages of all times who embrace altruism for humankind's sake. I never understood to this level when Paul said that it was not him that was living, it was Christ living through him. And thank God that I read this chapter. This, if anything, now I can listen to Paul saying such a thing and understand. Because it seems something so far, right? It's Christ that is living through me when Paul said such a thing. And it's like, how do I get there? Joanna the Angelus brought us today the examples and how we will be able to get there. Remember this. Paul's telling us, that's why we brought a part of it. At the end of chapter 15, who talks about charity in the Gospel according to Spiritism? The Apostle Paul. So he knows what he's talking about it. And if you read Paul and Stephen, you learn even more. What he had to do, applying these factors that we saw here today, these examples today, to get to where he was, to be one of the helpers of the codification as well, the Spiritist codification. So now when you hear it, you know where to rescue that information. It's Christ that is living through me. I know we have a long way to get there, but there is a way. And if we put our effort, if we're generous, if we're patient, if we're courageous, right, it can be done as well. And be serene. That goes along with humility, as we said earlier today. I stop talking right now, and I would like to hear from you about 5 more minutes or so we can go to the second part of this evening now.
Can you go back to Serenity? There is one sentence there about ethics that I am amazed about. Yeah, thus there are ethics that support slave states, restrict freedom of movement, hinder procreation. Yes, so in our days, we think, well, we don't slave anymore. I don't suffer with this unethical action. I don't restrict freedom, people. No, we do actually. In another facet of action activities, like I was thinking, restrict freedom of movement. You know, we all upset when it's school time, school hours, and there is a double parking to drop your kid. in a dangerous situation when you may have other ways to drop your kid. In Brazil, it happens a lot. There's a
Right.
lot of complaint about this. So this, I thought what I would classify as education. Oh, that country, that people are more educated than us. But then she brings us altruism, not to upset the freedom of others with this little, almost illegal action of parking, double parking in the street. You know, I'm not being altruistic. It's not just a matter of education. So that's interesting. Slave states, when I don't help my coworker, when I could free that person from little ignorance, little unknowing, not she knows so she can perform better or he can perform better. I am being altruistic. That I think is fantastic that she brings that. Of course, the procreation still happens in some countries, you know, and also these geographic customs that we were talking the last study on Thursday. You know, I think we have all to pay attention how much we want to follow those social rules in detriment of being nicer or being more altruistic to the whole larger population. Oh,
Right.
but I cannot break this rule because my grandparents did the same way. So I think we have to have now the courage to break those
Right.
because it's unethical.
Real quick in terms of culture, I remember it wasn't culture, it was culture. It was culture. Well, we can use culture that I think it's applicable. The social, the traditions that Haroldo Druta one time, actually, when he was here, he mentioned that it was very, very interesting. Customs, traditions, culture should be relived, should be respected. But when it comes in a way that separates people, then it's not good anymore. Then it needs to be reanalyzed because perhaps that was not, and this is now me I'm trying to understand, because we don't want to offend any tradition, we don't want to offend any culture, but we have to analyze to say, okay, is it helping the greater good? Okay, everybody, when I say the greater good, because we don't want to be an individual that is only thinking about the good that is right in front of us, as we have studied with Joanna De Angelis at the beginning as well. But is it for everybody, right? So yes, Yasko, this point over here is really interesting because it gives us, it reminds us again that it's for everybody. And we also stop people from growing, right? The moment that we say, oh, don't you think that is too hard? Why did you have to say that? The worst thing is when you are in endeavor and you're following through, you're doing everything that you can, and then somebody comes to you and say, oh, you're doing it too much. Why do you go to the center? Why do you go to this? And we studied this recently at the house when we're studying the book Our Father by Mei Mei, that when we allow ourselves to get into this idea that, oh, it's too much, we are enslaving ourselves. We're enslaving others as well. So the best thing when you see somebody really working hard at school, at work, or doing something, promote that idea. Say, look, good job. Be careful with your health, but good job. Keep doing it. Right? Not to exalt the person or anything, but the action, the drive that the person has. Right? Yeah, and the wife sometimes and the husband sometimes are like, oh, poor you. No, keep going. Keep going. We have to do more. We came here to learn something. We came here to become better individuals and help others as well. Not to stop, and we do enslave one another. We do stop people from others. We take their time sometimes because we become needy, right? So guess what? We're enslaving. Parents, love parents that used to, kid, do this, kid, do that, do this, do that, right? Yes, we have to delegate things to one another at home, at work, But there are a lot of parents that once they have kids, that's all they do. So-and-so do this, so-and-so do that. Where is the example that we have to put forth as well? So thank you for bringing this up, because this is certainly very important. A couple more, or one more question, comment? Aloise is going to try to talk about mathematics. Good. We're thinking. That's a good thing. Next time, we will be visiting another extremely important chapter, the causes of suffering. Remember, what we did was to go through an analysis of suffering, and we saw some causes, but at the origins of suffering as well, at the end of sufferings. But we're going to go to the roots now. We're going to go to the roots of what causes me to suffer. And you can think about this for a month, because we have already scheduled for the end of next month that we're going to meet again for chapter 7. And what are the causes of my suffering? And as you think about it, what can I do, become an altruistic person, applying some of the habits or aspects that Joanna de Angelis brought to us, to end that suffering? And how is important for us to do? That's the question that I would like to leave everyone. Please buy the book, study the book, read the book, text me. I would love to have these conversations with you if you don't understand something, because chances are I'll say, I don't understand either. So let's rescue something else to get to, because it's important for all of us. And you may also think, what have I got myself into? But you're not alone. You're not alone. I have received a couple messages recently of people who are following this conversation, because I'm not here to teach anything. It's mainly people who I'm mainly here to help and understand more, or perhaps embrace the idea that we need to read this, we need to touch on this. That is being very, very, very helpful, very enlightening to have a group of people studying and living this message. Kirsten, thank you for the reminder. Please read that quote. No, let's read now.
This is just in reference to being courageous. And I think that in order to be altruistic, and really, you have to be courageous enough to face who you are as a person, because you have to face yourself and do that self-reflection and self-evaluation. So this is a quote from Theodore Roosevelt, and it's entitled "The Man in the Arena."
Wow.
It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how strong the man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who's actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who never know victory nor defeat.
If we can take that to the rest of our lives, to know that at the end, when we go back and we can tell ourselves, I tried my best every single day, every single time, right? So, since you have the microphone, would you like to come and do our visualization so we can close tonight? Thank you, everyone.